After the toll road chaos, I thought the HOA had finally learned to stay in their lane. I was wrong. HOA Karen, incapable of humility and addicted to control, decided to escalate again. But this time, she crossed from petty harassment into a full-blown crime. Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching right now. Because what happened next didn't just test my patience, it redefined the limits of stupidity and arrogance. It started at dawn. Ranger, my German shepherd, stood rigid outside the garage, barking like he sensed betrayal. When I opened the door, the silence was deafening. My Lamborghini, the centerpiece of my collection, my reward for decades of discipline, was gone. The faint smell of rubber and gasoline still hung in the air. Outside, fresh tire marks scarred the dirt road leading out toward the ridge. The security feed confirmed it. Karen's son, hood up, sneaking in under the motion lights, bypassing alarms, gripping the wheel like a child pretending to be a man. He'd stolen the car in the night, tearing across my ranch like it was his personal racetrack. But what they didn't know was that every inch of that land was mapped, logged, and recorded, every trespass time-stamped. I wasn't just another property owner. Before the ranch, I spent 20 years in federal defense contracting, tracking logistics, enforcing compliance, and writing the same kind of policies HOA Karens think they can ignore. Out here, every post, fence, and road was built to code. My code. I'd given them warnings before, about the toll road, about the unauthorized road work, about the mailbox sabotage. But arrogance always grows where accountability doesn't. This land was supposed to be peace, a sanctuary away from bureaucracy. But people like Karen don't understand freedom. They mistake it for weakness. She'd been chairing the HOA for 3 years, running it like a private monarchy, punishing anyone who didn't bend. She once cited me for non-compliant gate dimensions. I cited her for trespass and had the sheriff deliver the notice in person. So when the Lamborghini disappeared, this wasn't just theft. It was the natural consequence of letting entitlement run unchecked. I'd built my property like a fortress, but they still found a way in. Karen ran the HOA like a dictatorship masked as community service. Her board meetings were theater. Fake smiles, whispered deals, and quiet intimidation. She'd built influence through gossip and coercion. Her son, raised in the same arrogance, had been caught vandalizing other residents' mailboxes and threatening staff. Every time, she covered for him. Her political reach stretched into city code enforcement, favor trading, and backroom deals. Anyone who pushed back faced anonymous fines and citations. She'd weaponized bureaucracy, and now she'd passed that corruption down to her son. I'd watched her manipulate others for years, her charm brittle, her voice sugar-coated but venomous underneath. I warned them, the more power you let her pretend she has, the more she'll believe it's real. And sure enough, when the sheriff confirmed who stole my Lamborghini, Karen arrived before I could even speak, already rewriting the story in her favor. While the sheriff processed the report, I went to work the way I always did, methodically. Surveillance footage downloaded, license plate logs matched to timestamps, mud samples collected from the tracks, verified as runoff from my creek bed. Every inch of evidence cataloged, certified, and notarized. By noon, I'd cross-referenced GPS metadata from my ranch security server. The system showed exactly where he'd driven, through pasture, along the ridge, then straight into the creek at 89 miles per hour. The impact data aligned perfectly with the damage pattern on the car's underbody. Insurance was notified. The VIN report filed. Then came the kicker. Text messages from Karen to her son surfaced through the sheriff's investigation. Don't talk to him. It'll blow over. It wouldn't. I sent certified copies of all evidence to my attorney, the sheriff's department, and the HOA board. There would be no blowing over this time. But what they didn't realize was that I'd already filed a notice of intent for civil restitution. By the time the HOA tried to intervene, the paperwork was already in motion. Karen stormed onto my property that evening, waving her arms, voice shrill. "It was an accident. He's just a kid. You left it open." Her son stood behind her, pale, silent, guilty. She demanded that I handle it privately, claiming her family's reputation was on the line. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Your son stole federal property in a state with zero tolerance laws for grand theft auto. You'll want to save your reputation for court." The sheriff arrived minutes later, stepping between us. Karen's tone shifted, crying now, pleading. But law doesn't bend to tears. I showed the sheriff everything: video, VIN logs, timestamps, text messages. The deputy's jaw tightened. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he said. "This is a felony." News spread fast. Local blogs picked it up. Residents whispered. The HOA board held an emergency meeting the next day. But the damage was irreversible. Karen's community queen image crumbled overnight. Her emails leaked. Fines she'd forged, complaints she'd hidden, violations she'd ignored. The same arrogance that made her powerful now made her radioactive. I filed my civil claim for damages within 48 hours. My attorney followed it with a letter of intent to the HOA's insurance carrier, detailing negligence, enabling behavior, and breach of duty. Within days, the state's Department of Consumer Protection initiated a review into the HOA's governance, triggered by the media exposure. Karen's son was formally charged. The HOA's liability insurance froze their accounts pending investigation. I didn't have to raise my voice once. Every step was lawful, documented, and precise. The same codes Karen had weaponized against homeowners were now the very tools dismantling her empire. Her emails revealed she'd used HOA funds to cover personal expenses, landscaping, events, and, ironically, the very security system that failed to stop her son. Federal auditors called it misuse of association resources. By the end of the week, HOA members were resigning, attorneys scrambling, and Karen, once untouchable, was now a liability nobody wanted near a meeting table. The Lamborghini was retrieved and fully repaired within a month. Insurance covered the rest, then turned around and sued the HOA for reimbursement. Karen tried to plead ignorance, but ignorance isn't a defense when arrogance leaves a trail of proof. The state dissolved her HOA charter after the audit. Publicly, she blamed vindictive homeowners. Privately, she signed restitution orders and court settlements. Her son received probation, mandatory restitution payments, and a permanent mark on his record. One evening, I stood on the porch with Ranger at my feet, watching the rebuilt Lamborghini shine in the sunset. Peace had returned, not because they surrendered, but because they'd been dismantled by their own arrogance. On my land, property rights aren't debatable. They're law. Audacity without ownership leads to ruin. Karen and her son learned that the hard way, and the next time anyone on this ranch thinks of crossing that line, they'll remember. The last family that tried ended up buried in their own paperwork, drowning in consequences they never saw coming. Because out here, authority isn't loud. It's silent, strategic, and absolute.